Wonderful. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hosted by Trevor and Christelle. We have a special guest tonight, Leighton Baker. Welcome.
Thanks very much.
You.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you and to have this chat tonight. We're going to be discussing the interesting subject of conservative Christians and politics and what is happening in New Zealand and in the world, not just New Zealand, all over the world. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are.
Okay. No, I don't want to bore you too much. Look, I'm just the average Kiwi bloke, I suppose. I've lived here my whole life. I've been building for 30-odd years. I really enjoy the trade, enjoy the challenges of it, which is mainly problem solving. But I got involved in politics probably 10, 20 years ago, something like that, really around the whole thing of democracy. My concern is the fact that a democracy works well when people have equal input. And I could see signs on the walls then that there were certain people that were more willing to push their agenda than listen to the people. And unfortunately, that's got worse and worse as time's gone on. So I've got an amazing wife who's been very supportive in it because it's not that easy sometimes. I've got 4 adult children and they challenge, like all good children should, give you a hard time, but very supportive as well. And I'm really proud dad of them. And now I've got a few grandchildren, 5 grandchildren who are just a delight.
Wow.
And once you have grandchildren, you go, that's what it's all about, So I count myself as probably one of the most blessed people in the whole wide world, really. Wife that loves me, grandchildren, children, live in a beautiful country. So, you look with envy. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's good. Yes. Trevor, did you have a question?
How and why did you get involved in politics?
Yeah, it really was necessity. I quite enjoy building. I love it, and actually, the reality of the thought of being in the beehive listening to speeches all the time doesn't do anything for me at all. But New Zealand has been an amazing country, and it's been a very giving country and a very free country, and it's been a country that's been great to bring your kids up in. But we've seen the culture in New Zealand hijacked and over the last probably 10, 15 years by small splinter groups that have been very vocal and active, and they've done a great job. But what we've done over that time is we've changed who we are as a nation, and we've seen a lot of negative effects of that. And if we look at where we are now compared to 20-odd years ago, and we look at suicide rates, we look at the murder rates, the crime rates, the family breakdown, the poverty, none of those statistics are getting any better. And I believe it's because we've gone away from our core values, And so part of it has been, and I think most New Zealanders actually adhere to those values of reward for effort, free speech, less government. You make your own choices around your family and your life. The government don't do it for you. Most New Zealanders are like that, and so they've gone, that's the government, that's over there, and so as long as it does it over there, I can just carry on my life and I'll be fine. But they haven't realised that those walls have been closing in on them until now, when they look around and go, oh my goodness, we've got a government that controls every single thing we do. I didn't see that coming.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it isn't something that's happened instantly. It's been a slow creep over a period of time. And to be brutally honest, there's a lot of conservatives out there that haven't been bothered getting involved, thought it would never affect them, didn't put the effort in, and we see the results we have now because of that apathy.
Yeah.
And somehow what I've observed is there's a disconnect between the generations. It's as if the young people don't want to hear what the older people have to say. So I don't see moral values being taught. It's as if they think it's going to, it should be taught, but they think it's going to be caught, that the young people will just somehow become moral or learn conservative values from watching people. There isn't I don't see people being taught what is right, how to live a good life, how to have a good family, the values, the family values of loving your wife, taking care of having a wife, taking care of your family, that whole thing. it's as if there's a disconnect, and even in the conservative groups, that there isn't this thing of teaching the younger generation of this is the way. It's as if we don't want to. We've been told, we've only been in the country for 6 years, but it's as if people have been told not to teach, not to tell people what to do. It's as young people are saying, don't tell me what to do. Have you experienced that? What is your...
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've got to realise it's not by accident. There's a long cunning plan that people have been put in place for the last 30 years to do just that, to break down the family unit. They see the family unit, especially the patriarchal family unit, as a threat. And you've got to understand that there's a bit of logic to that, because sometimes the patriarchal family unit has been very much one-sided, and the rest of the family are all way down compared to the father, and that is not a balanced family, and it doesn't work. And so there's been kickback to that, but the kickback's been so swift, it's about destroying the family unit, whereas the actual family unit working really well is perfect, because you have a mother who has different abilities to a father. They raise children differently. I mean, a classic one is if you're at the park and the kid's on the swing and the dad's going to go higher, and the mother's going, oh, that's high enough. And
yeah,
I mean, she carried it for 9 months and pushed it out. She's got a bit more invested probably, but those two different ways of parenting, different ways that love a child, are actually really good for the child. They need both of those. And those two in a loving relationship that is mutually beneficial to both of them, respects each other, is actually really beneficial as well, because it teaches respect for other people, respect for authority, it's diligence, it's sacrificial. In a good family, everyone's sacrificial, and it's, they've said it's the upside down world that's inside out, but I can't actually make myself happy. I can give myself a bit of pleasure by doing something I enjoy doing, but it doesn't actually give me that deep-seated happiness. What gives me happiness is when I'm making someone else happy and I see the joy in them. And it's like giving a gift, but it's when you do something for someone or do something for your spouse. So when I make my spouse happy, I feel really good about it because I've made her happy. But in return, she does the same for me, which does fill my love tank. And so we're both made happier. But if I'm selfish and self-centered and just do what I want, she's obviously not happy, and she feels rejected or abandoned or used or abused or whatever. And I'm not really happy because I'm being selfish. And then she won't try to make me happy. And it's a downward spiral. But what we've got at the moment is the whole thing is all about you. And so this is almost a cyclic thing that's gone through the generations. And we're going through the cycle now where it's all about you. Well, it doesn't actually work. And by the time people find out it doesn't work, it's too late for them and their generation sometimes. So if you want to make yourself happy, make other people happy. That's a very basic part of it. And that's what a good marriage does. And when you stop doing that, your marriage collapses and your family collapses. And then you have the children that are split families, and all the heartache can go with that. So, we're seeing that in New Zealand at the moment. We're seeing a breakdown of family. That affects everything. It affects incomes. It affects housing. It affects education. It affects the children growing up. It affects mental health. All of that is affected by the breakdown in the family, and the breakdown in the family has been purposeful by the changing of laws and the direction of what's said. And we're seeing the fruit of those decisions now.
Absolutely. It's as if, years ago, one of our main purposes were grow up, meet the person, your match, your soulmate, have a family. That was one of the main things that you wanted to do in life. Now that purpose has been taken away from young people, where having a family isn't important. People have children with different partners, and they have these disconnected connections, but the family, the goal or the aim of having a family isn't there anymore, or is lacking. Yes.
It's short term. It's the whole thing. I want to make myself happy, so I want to buy the latest car or motorbike or toy, and I want to go travel and enjoy life, and I'll have children later when I'm ready, and all that. But the trouble with that selfishness, the payback is later on when, I'm probably quite a young granddad, but when a grandchild comes running in the room and jumps on your knee, you can't buy that. You can't go to the shop and get that. That's something that you're getting as return for investment you've done over years within your own children and then with your grandchildren. So it's that long-term view. What happens at the end of your life? Do you want to be all alone, surrounded by crash cars and motorbikes, sitting by yourself, and you just about lost your license, you can't drive them? Or actually, do you want to be surrounded by family? You may not have any toys. You may not have a whole lot of wealth, but you've got family around you that love you, that want to come and see you, want to talk to you, want to hang out with you. I know which one I'd prefer as an older person. But to get that now, I have to do something a long way ahead beforehand. And so that's what we're missing out at the moment, where people aren't looking into the future. What's the result going to be?
Absolutely. And that children are our future.
Well, they're going to choose where you spend your retirement home, probably. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of the values that were installed in most of the Western countries were Judeo-Christian values. And we've been moved away from those values and the Judeo-Christian roots. And I was just looking at some statistics, and in 2018, the consensus said that there was more people with no religion in New Zealand than those that do. It's 48%. That was in 2018. 48% of the population has no religion. And it's steadily growing. In 2013, it was 42%. 2006 was 34.6%. And so we can see how this has been steadily climbing.
I don't think it's no religion.
It must have an obvious effect on the country. Yeah.
It's not no religion. If you replace the word religion with belief system, okay, and everybody has a belief system, and it's a belief system because you believe it, you know, and people can't prove the opposite to you. So some people believe there's a God, some people believe there's not a God. The people that believe there's not a God, they believe it, and they believe there's enough evidence to prove what they believe. Those that believe there is a God believe there's enough evidence to prove what they believe. So everyone has a belief system. The belief system is switched from believing there is a God to believing there's no God, but it's still a belief system. And so then you've got to say, okay, what is the outworking of my belief system? So if you believe there's a God, you believe you're accountable to someone else, and you will be held to account in the future to a higher authority. If you believe there's no God, then you don't have that belief system, so you can do whatever you like, and there is never a time of accountability. It's just whatever. And so those two belief systems have different outworkings on the way you behave, the way you act, the way you treat other people, depending on your belief system. So when they say no religion, it's not no religion. They just have a different belief system. But they want to call it no religion because they feel a bit about it. They feel that their way is the right way, which is what every belief system has. Doesn't matter whether you're Hindu or Muslim or Christian or atheist or agnostic or whatever. It's all a belief system, and you believe your one is right. And so I just say, well, what's the outcoming? What do you see as the fruit of that belief system? And you know, let's be brutally honest. The church, some of the outcoming of what the church has done in the past has been horrendous. You know, they've really done real harm, absolutely, and there's no getting away from that. But at the end of the day, I sort of say it like this way: if I'm wrong, I've actually lost nothing, because all I've done is try and live my life honestly and treat people with respect. And I've dropped the ball a few times by quite a long shot, but that's what I've tried to do for my life. If I'm right, the rewards are massive. Now, if you don't believe there's God, or you believe there's no God, if you're right, you got no reward whatsoever. You don't gain anything if you're right. But if you're wrong, you've lost absolutely everything. So if you do a cost risk analysis, I think my way sort of got a bigger advantage.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
Absolutely. What do you think the conservative voters and the Christians should be doing in our country, in New Zealand, and in other countries? What do you think that at this time?
At some stage, you've got to find out what is the main thing for them. So, for instance, in New Zealand here, we have a lot of different parties, and in any church there'll be people that support a whole lot of different parties. So, you know, you go to church, and sitting around you will be people that support the Labour, the National, Greens, New Zealand First, ACT, Māori Party, you know, all those different parties we represented within your church congregation. And so my challenge is, well, what is the core thing you're most here for? What is the very core belief? So if you abandon the core belief and you say, well, look, I support this party now, they also support full-time abortion and they're breaking down the family, but I really like this part of them. What is the main thing important for you? And I think what's happened is we've seen a whole lot of those little things. Right now, what we're seeing is a really fast move, I believe, towards a socialist system where the government wants to control absolutely everything. And in reality, that's what they do right now. But that's because they've been allowed to by a gradual creep of people going, well, actually, when it comes to voting, there's an interesting book put out by Family First every election, and it lists the parties and how they voted on family and social issues. The party I was involved in, we ranked top the time I was doing it as far as voting, our voting record, or what we've stood for, or what we've put our name to in regards to family issues. That did not transcribe into votes. So therefore, you've got to ask, well, what are you actually voting for? So people were voting for money, what would be better for their wallet, or some other reason that they were voting for, but it wasn't for families because we didn't see that. And now we've got the result of that. And they're going, how did this happen? Well, it's what you actually voted for. You've got what you voted for, but you didn't look deep enough to see what that was.
But you see, the thing is, what I'm observing is that people in the church they think just the same as people outside of the church. The church, Christians we should be different. We should be thinking on a different, morally, we have guidance from the Bible. If we believe the Bible is true and is the word of God and gives us, is our handbook, our instruction manual for life, then the Bible should be impacting who we are. We shouldn't be living by fear. We should be living by faith. We shouldn't be depressed because when we trust God and the joy of the Lord is my strength, then I shouldn't be depressed. But what I'm seeing is, and I'm not standing as a judge on anybody, but what I've realized is that the world's value system has impacted the Christians instead of the Christians impacting the world and the people outside of Christian circles. And how do we change that? How do we get people to stand up for what is right? It's as if there's it's not just a disconnect, but it's as if people are blinded by the truth.
There's a few things in it, and I guess the other thing I should have mentioned is that the church have seen people stand up on a moral platform and then fall over and do something stupid, and they've been really hurt and embarrassed by it, and I fully get that, and that makes it very hard for them to say, well, why should I vote for that person? They'll probably just do the same thing and then embarrassment. And unfortunately, then they go and support someone whose morals are even worse, but that's okay because they don't stand for anything moral. But there's a dilemma there, and there's no perfect person in the world, and unfortunately,
of course not. No.
We see someone stand up and say, look, I want to present this value, and they anticipate them being perfect, but nobody is. And unfortunately, as soon as there's a crack appears, everyone puts the boot in or abandons them. And that's one thing the church hasn't done very well, is actually support the people that have spoken up for the values they have. They've almost done a Uriah the Hittite on them. You go to the wall and we'll withdraw, and what's a shame they got slaughtered. I hadn't seen that coming.
Friendly fire.
Well, not even friendly. Well, sometimes it's friendly fire. Sometimes you put the boot on them, but sometimes it's abandonment to let them be taken out by mainstream media or other parties, rather than supporting them. Going, they're not perfect, but they're on my team, and because they're on my team, I'll stand up for them. And we need to be a lot better at that. We've shot the wounded in our team rather than supporting them, and then we haven't had their backs well enough. And that's allowed them to become isolated. People become isolated; they're easily taken out, and so we've got a few lessons to learn, by those circumstances and what's happened previously.
So do you think that there is a future for a Christian party in New Zealand?
we never actually stood as a Christian party, and the reason for that is if you stand for a Christian party or a Hindu party or a Muslim party, you're standing on forcing your belief system on people. That's not the role of government. I even in party I was in, we weren't standing as a Christian party. It's not my role to force my belief system on anyone. It's my belief system. Get your own belief system. If you want the same one, I'll share it with you, and you can share yours with me. But you choose your own belief system. So, we talk about the separation of church and state. It's really the separation. Your belief system is one thing, but when it comes to politics, you're there to represent the people. And I think that's what we've lost in New Zealand. There's no longer that.
That's a very important point. That
are you serving the people? Or are you ruling over them? That's a big difference.
Yes.
And what we're seeing now, and so I've been advocating for a long time on the whole citizens-initiated referendum, making it binding. And the reason for that is I want to let the people of New Zealand have the opportunity to hold the government to account when they're making laws they don't actually want. Because what we're seeing now is the outplaying of a government that has total control. And they can do what they like, and if they break the rules, they'll simply change the rules to make it so they haven't broken them. And we've seen that happen. And that's ringing alarm bells for the judiciary, because they're going, hold on a minute, we're all about the law, and suddenly you're above the law. So I don't think there should really be a Christian party. There can be a party with Christian values in it, but those values are shared by a whole lot of different people who may not be Christian. And so when as soon as you say it's a Christian party, you limit it to Christians, but we don't. What we're saying is, I believe we should be a party that says, hey, look, we want to be a party that represents the family as being the best institution to grow families in. We want to be a party that supports the idea of personal responsibility, less government intervention. Yes, help those that are really in need, but actually it should be help them to actually achieve rather than just support them to do nothing. And so it's those ideas of what you're standing for rather than on a belief system itself. And so, I probably don't actually support really a Christian party because it's exclusive. Whereas actually, you want a party that's good for all people, and the morals of Christianity or the lessons of Christianity are good for all people. It doesn't matter what you believe in. Being faithful is actually good for all marriages. Doesn't matter what your belief system is. Not being greedy is good for all people. It doesn't matter what your belief system is. Honoring people is good. It doesn't matter what your belief system is. So those values can transcribe over all belief systems, but as soon as you say, that's one belief system, you're being exclusive, and I can't see the benefit for that.
Exclusive.
I suppose it's more a conservative party than what it is a specific religion, because if we look at what happened in America, that it was the conservative voters that voted, the 80 million. It wasn't just the Christians. And they acknowledged that. We watched what was happening there quite a bit from the Christian television channels, and they were saying that it was the conservative voters that came together last year and voted.
And that's important because you want people with the similar values. One thing you don't want is someone forcing their belief system on everyone else. We don't want that. That's no good, whatever their belief system is. And I mean, having a belief system forced on us by the government, they're trying to legislate it. And they are legislating it because they have total control, and that's wrong. This just put one thing out there, the non-conversion bill they're putting through at the moment, there hasn't been no formal complaint in New Zealand about conversion therapy. None. No formal complaint whatsoever. So the government are passing a law on something there's been no formal complaint for. Why? Well, it's part of the ideology. And the hate speech laws, it's all aimed about not being able to tell your children they're a boy or a girl. It's really around that sort of thing. That's what it's about. And yet, that's their ideology, and so they're forcing that on the people of New Zealand. They're not asking them; they're ignoring what they say because it's part of their belief system. So they, as far as a fundamentalist belief, system goes, this is probably the strongest one we've had because it's forcing its belief system on everyone and not allowing them to choose. And I just agree with that. But it's because we've enabled that system in New Zealand.
Well,
could it be that people have been told, be kind, be tolerant, don't give your opinion, be quiet, you have no right to speak up. So I mean, I spoke to somebody yesterday that she says, and I see that on Facebook with the comments, as soon as somebody does have a conservative view or rings the alarm bell of what is happening in the country, then people shout them down as
Yeah, but that's
labeled. People are bullied and labeled when they do speak up.
Yeah, so they say be kind, but if you speak up, there's nothing kind about the bullying that happens.
No.
They say we're tolerant, but they're only tolerant if you agree with them. If you don't agree, there's no tolerance whatsoever. It's the opposite way around, and that's the thing that, I mean, I smile and laugh, but it's what you actually see. We see the very opposite of what they say. We want an anti-bullying culture. Man, look at the bullying that goes on if you don't agree with them.
Absolutely.
It's massive. It's horrendous.
Yeah.
We look at the propaganda the government's engaged in. Something like $100 million has been spent on PR. To me personally, if the Prime Minister is there to represent the people, they shouldn't need to spend so much on PR. So you're just telling the truth to the people. This is what we're doing. This is what you've said to us. This is what we're doing. This is how we back it up. When you're spending too much on PR, you're trying to force something on people because you're not actually telling them the truth. That's how I feel about it. And then when we see what's happened just recently with the Three Waters, it sort of endorses that belief. It reaffirms the belief that actually we're not being told the truth.
Now, once again, talking to Christians, so often what happens is people say, well, Romans 13 says we must submit to the government because it's been put there by God, and we need to pray for the government, and that's basically kind of stops. But what we are seeing, and looking at America and places around the world now, we're seeing that the Christians are starting to get involved. I'm speaking from a Christian's perspective. Obviously, we're looking at who we're going to support at the next elections. What values should we be looking at? What should Christians be doing in order to make a change in the countries where they live, other than praying for the government and being respectful of the government?
I think we've got to learn a lesson from the left. So the left got involved in all spheres of society: education, health, the government, the bureaucrats in Parliament. They've got involved in every sphere so they can have positions of influence. Meanwhile, the Christians are staying outside of that, and now they have no influence, very little influence. So, we see curriculums coming through our schools that if people actually stopped and read it, they go, oh my goodness, what's been taught in our schools isn't what you think a lot of the times. And we see it in politics, where we see a lot of people get involved in politics. They're putting an agenda through that they have the authority to put it through because they were elite voted in, because we were the people that actually could have offered an alternative. There weren't enough of them there. And I'm not degrading the people that are in there that I think are great people and doing really well, but they're just too few in number. And so they can't actually make the change they want to. So Christians have got to get involved in every facet, whether it's with your local board of trustees at your local school, whether it's on the health board or the local council, or they've got to get involved. They can't just hide away in their own wee cave. That's not what we're meant to do. Salt's no good if it's kept in the container. You got to stick it on the meal. A light's no good under a jar. You got to let it out. We've got to be there. Even if it's to contest views, as long as you do it in the right attitude, but we've got to be there to bring another side to it and say, oh, that's cool. What about if, or what if, or what does it look like if we do this? If we're not there contesting it, then the people that are pushing their barrow get their way, and we see what we're seeing now. So you've got to get involved in some way. And you've got to recognise that the people that are maybe standing up, they need your support. They need your encouragement. They need your back.
Absolutely.
Because once you stick your head above the parapet, there's a lot of people flashing some big knives around. And, I saw some I shouldn't say classic. I saw some interesting things last year in politics where, the media would tell blatant lies. And I'd have people ringing me, giving them a grilling over something that wasn't true, but they'd heard it in the media. So because I heard in the media, it was true. And, we've got to stop that and go, actually, well, what's the true story here, and come back. On the flip side, I had great people come up to me and say, hey, look, I heard this, what's really going on? And that was good. That's what we need. So we need to back each other. We need to be on each other's team. We need to overlook each other's faults and see how we can help people with those, and see what we can do with the skills and gifts we've got and the abilities we've got to make New Zealand a better place. Because I firmly believe this is the greatest nation on earth. I mean, I just love it. not so much powerful or the best at anything in particular, but we live in a beautiful bit of paradise. We've got everything going for us around it. It is a great place to bring up families, and we want to keep it that way. I think the biggest threat to us at the moment really is socialism, which is the government controlling everything, which takes away your freedom to have your belief system, which takes away the freedom for you to bring up the families the way you want, run your businesses the way you want. It takes away entrepreneurship, it takes away creativity, and it will eventually take away your property and your prosperity. That's just how socialism works. So that's the threat to us at the moment, and the biggest threat to it is your loss of freedom to have a belief that you want. And when that happens, all of a sudden the churches will be really, really concerned, you know. I think they are now a wee bit, but if you're told, no, you can't say that, you can't preach that, you know, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to say that anymore, where does that leave them? And if we want that right and that ability to speak what we believe the truth is, then we've actually got to put some action into retaining it.
Absolutely.
So the first thing is people need to become aware of what's going on. Actually become aware.
Inform themselves.
Listen to what is being spoken through the mainstream media and then go and do some alternative research. Don't just receive everything from mainstream media.
No.
And then after you've become aware and you've done some research, then go and find out where you can get involved.
Yeah. I mean, we can make a difference anywhere we are, whether it's just in our local community with our local friends, families, our local community groups. We can make a difference, you know. And so many people got so many different skills. I loved last year we were traveling around a bit. We sort of went on length and breadth of New Zealand, chatting to different groups, and just seeing the creativity and the diversity up and down New Zealand was awesome. You know, be a little town, there's someone doing a wee business there, and you find out they're exporting it around the world. And
wow,
you know, people doing something totally new or totally different. And it's all over New Zealand. I don't see that creativity go. We need to be a nation that rewards and encourages that. You know, at the moment, one of the things we're seeing is that around the whole carbon credits thing, we're turning good pasture land into forestry to gain carbon credits.
Yes.
Which sounds really good. The way it's sold sounds great. We're going to save the world. But if you dig a wee bit deeper, it's not actually that good. We're losing pasture land, which produces food. But you're not getting the carbon credits if you plant it on scrubby hills that are overgrown. You won't get your carbon credits for that, even though it grows the same trees. The farmers aren't credited for the bush they've got on their property that's already gaining, already sucking up carbon. They don't get a credit for that. Yes. So it's not a balanced system. And the reality is there's twice as many people are going to die from hunger this year that have been killed by COVID all up. And yet we can solve it by feeding them. It's a very simple solution. Yet we're reducing our food in New Zealand to plant pine trees, which unfortunately is pushing up the value of farmland more than what is worth for farmers. So farmers can't make economic sense out of it. So it's big corporations overseas buying our farmland, planting pine trees. We're giving them the money for the carbon credits, and they're stuffing in small communities because there's only about 12% of people are employed in forestry compared to farming. So your towns shrink, your schools disappear, the doctors leave, the banks close down, you lose your whole rural community for some pine trees. And that to me is nonsensical. New Zealand produces is some of the best food in the world. And what we really should be doing is making more and better food rather than less, because people need to eat. That's what we should be doing. But we've sort of taken on a massive amount of debt and also reduced our way to pay for the debt. And it's that sort of thing that needs to be contested and spoken about. What is actually good for us as a nation? What can we actually do that's better, rather than just going wholeheartedly on this carbon credit thing without looking deeper into what's really going on? And that's an example of what you hear in MSM compared to what is actually really happening out there. And what is the real effects on the community of going down this pathway? And are we in New Zealand, as we shoot ourselves in the foot and do away with our export income, doing it to make a very, very minuscule, virtually unmeasurable difference when massive polluters around the world continue to belch out their stuff? It's almost like a kid at the front of the Titanic, tightening up the latch on the porthole when the rest of the boat is flooding. It doesn't make logical sense. So we need to look carefully of what we can do to look after our environment, at the same time looking after people. And there are ways to do that. And we haven't got time tonight to talk about. There are ways to do that, but this wholehearted thing of no, we just got to plant 1 billion pine trees. I really just think that's detrimental to New Zealand in the long term. It's going to be quite harmful to us as a nation.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, it's really good speaking to Leighton and having all these issues aired and spoken about. I just want to mention that Leighton and his daughter Chantal have been involved in sharing very thought-provoking and excellent podcasts chatting about all of these issues, from COVID-19 to the vaccine, on Facebook, and I'm not too sure what other sites you use or platforms you use. And I just want to encourage everybody to get on and have a look and listen, because I listen to just about everything that Leighton puts out at the moment, and they really are not only informative but provoking, makes you think, and then stirs you to action. Thank you for that.
And we don't get it all right. We're trying our very best and making sure we verify the information we give out. But at the end of the day, we want people to be able to talk about and discuss it, because that's the important thing.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
That's right.
We just see what's happening now is you're not allowed to talk about things. So to me, that's really wrong. We need to listen to each other. We need to listen to what else is happening out there. The science is never settled. There's always something new coming out. We've got to be willing to listen. And I think one of the greatest catastrophes in New Zealand at the moment is the way that the pressure's gone on people to not even discuss things.
Absolutely.
And that's officially as well. There's letters going out from the Medical Council saying to doctors they're not allowed to question what's going on. Well, that's totally wrong. And so we need to question that. Whether we're right or wrong, we need to question it. And I was just saying to someone the other day, the role of the opposition is to question what the government's doing, whether they believe it or not. Because when it comes to the vote, if they say, look, all the evidence points this one way, they can agree with it. But before it comes to the vote, they need to look into every nook and cranny, every consequence that they haven't foreseen, and push on every little bit, because that's what democracy is about. As soon as you get a system of government where the opposition aren't questioning, aren't willing to put their head up and say, well, what about this or what about that, you're losing your democracy, because we're not hearing the other side. And I think that's some reasons why we see some of the opposition parties at the moment really struggling, is because they're not actually acting as good opposition.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. It's been really nice chatting to you.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
it's really been great.
so much.
We appreciate you being here.
Wonderful.
And,
thank
we
you.
hope to have you back again sometime.
Yeah, no, I'd love to.
Sometime soon.
I'd love to. Keep up the good
All
work.
the best. You as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate
pleasure.
your voice.
We're only part of the team, so
Yep.
so are you guys. So we're all on the same team working together, which is great.
Yes.
Thanks
Wonderful.
very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
God bless you. Keep up. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And well, that was really great. With us. Leighton's here. Christelle's gone. Christelle's gone. Leighton's here. Well, it was really great to have Leighton with us. And thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next Thursday, chatting to a guest. And please put your remarks down there. Tell us what you think. And it's good just to start chatting about these things. God bless you. Bye-bye now.